In 2022, a massive Chinese police database leak exposed records tied to nearly 1 billion people. China says it has 1.4 billion. So, who's missing? Beijing didn't answer. It censored the question. Because if China's population is far smaller than claimed, then the entire myth of China's rise, the factories, the housing boom, the inevitable superpower narrative, starts collapsing. And the world built its future on that myth. Let's break down the biggest leak China has ever suffered, and what it may reveal about the most important number in geopolitics. An anonymous hacker known as China Dan broke into the Shanghai Public Security Bureau's database in mid-2022. What he found wasn't just a regional registry, it was a national police database containing personal records on close to 1 billion individuals. Names, addresses, birthplaces, national ID numbers, phone numbers, criminal case files, 23 terabytes of data. One of the biggest breaches in history. China Dan offered a sample of 250,000 records to prove it was real, then put the full data set up for sale for 10 Bitcoin, about $200,000. Cybersecurity analysts examined the sample. It was authentic. Random Chinese citizens from every corner of China appeared in the leak. Even tiny counties in Tibet with only a few thousand residents. Journalists started calling the phone numbers in the sample. Many of them worked. Real people, real data. This wasn't a hoax. Beijing's response? Immediate silence. State censors erased all mention of the leak on Chinese social media. The hashtag data leak was blocked on Weibo within hours. Discussion vanished from WeChat. The authorities went dark. No public denial, no explanation, no statement refuting the data's authenticity. In China, that silence speaks volumes. If the leaked database were fake, Beijing could have loudly debunked it and reassured the public. They didn't. Because they couldn't. Admitting what this data contained would undermine years of carefully managed population figures. So instead, they buried it. But here's what makes this leak so devastating. The database showed nearly 1 billion people. China claims 1.4 billion. That's a gap of 400 million people. 400 million! That's more than the entire population of the United States and Canada combined. It's as if an entire continent's worth of people vanished from China's ledgers. Where did they go? There are only two possible explanations, and neither is good. The first, the leak somehow missed huge swaths of the population. Maybe hundreds of millions of Chinese citizens weren't recorded in the police database. But that theory falls apart under scrutiny. Analysts noted that leaked records weren't just Shanghai residents or criminals. They covered nearly every county nationwide, big cities to remote villages. The sample included infants, elderly, and everyone in between. China's public security databases are highly interconnected. Local police feed information into a unified national system, used for everything from criminal checks to citizen ID management. It's very unlikely that a system containing billions of case entries would arbitrarily omit 30% of the populace. That leaves the second explanation, the one Beijing doesn't want anyone to consider. China's population has been massively exaggerated. The 1.4 billion figure? A lie. If the police registry reflects reality, then China simply does not have the number of people its government has long claimed. 400 million people counted in official statistics do not exist in real life. China's actual population could be closer to 1 billion than 1.4 billion. And that possibility forces a hard question. Why would China do this? The answer is simple. Population equals power. A larger population means more workers to drive industry, more consumers to fuel demand, more soldiers to project force, more clout on the world stage. China's aggregate GDP looks far more formidable with 1.4 billion people than with 1 billion. It projects an image of a vast consumer market and an endless labor pool. It attracts foreign investment. It convinces multinational companies they have to be in China. For decades, local officials had strong incentives to inflate their population data. The central government allocates budgets and resources partly based on population. More people on the books meant more money from Beijing for your province or county. It also meant more prestige and political kudos for hitting growth targets. During the era of strict birth limits, the one-child policy from 1979 to 2015, some local cadres falsified birth counts. They'd report more births than actually occurred to claim extra funds. Then underreport births the next year to show they complied with population control. By the 1990s and 2000s, this game led to a ballooning phantom population in the statistics. Chinese demographer Yi Fujian documented one example. In the 1990s, official records claimed 203 million births occurred over the decade. But subsequent census data found only about 164 million people born in that period could actually be accounted for. Almost 40 million births were mysteriously added on paper, as if an entire population the size of Poland was conjured out of thin air. Ghost babies entered into local registries to meet quotas or secure funding, but they never grew up to enroll in schools or show up in the census. And the pattern didn't stop there. Over-reporting your county's population had no real downside. It pleased superiors and unlocked more subsidies. By the time discrepancies might be noticed during a national census, the officials responsible had often moved on. Crucially, the central government wasn't eager to crack down on this practice because it served a convenient narrative that China was still large and growing. A larger population bolstered China's clout. It made China's rise look inevitable. As long as the economy was booming, few inside China questioned the numbers too loudly. Yi Fujian's own book, Big Country with an Empty Nest, which warned of overestimated population figures, was banned in China in 2007. The facade held, until China Dan's leak tore a hole in it. But even without the leak, the evidence of China's demographic collapse was everywhere for those willing to see it. Birth rates have been in freefall. In 2025, China's birth rate hit a historic low, 5.63 births per 1,000 people, even lower than Japan's. The lowest since the founding of the People's Republic in 1949. Only around 9 million babies were born in 2023. 2 decades ago, China saw over 20 million births annually. Fewer babies means future generations shrinking fast. You can already see the fallout. Maternity wards are emptying out. Kindergartens are closing. Over 20,000 kindergartens shut down in just 2 years. In some provinces, over half of all primary schools closed in the past decade. Not enough children. The sounds of childhood are growing scarce across China's towns and villages. And then there are the ghost cities. China's construction boom was fueled by the expectation of endless population growth and urban migration. It produced sprawling new urban districts that never filled up. By many estimates, China has between 65 and 80 million vacant apartments. These aren't units waiting a few weeks for a tenant. They are ghost homes that have sat unsold and unoccupied for years. Walk through the so-called ghost cities like Yuzhaipu in Tianjin, a financial district built to be a new Wall Street, and you'll find gleaming skyscrapers with dark windows. Deserted streets built for traffic jams that see only the occasional stray cyclist. Entire high-rise neighborhoods stand quiet as tombstones. Fewer people are moving in than predicted. Many who bought investor apartments have left them vacant, expecting future buyers who never materialized. It's a surreal landscape. Brand new megacities with hardly any souls. In 2021, China blew up 15 unfinished skyscrapers in Kunming after they sat empty for 8 years. 15 towers just demolished because no one was coming. This is what happens when you build for a population that doesn't exist. And now, the entire economic model is collapsing. China's real estate sector accounts for roughly 70% of household wealth. For context, in the US, it's about 35%. Chinese families are catastrophically overexposed to property, and the property market is in freefall. Evergrande, once China's second-largest developer, defaulted on over $300 billion in debt. It pre-sold around 1.6 million apartments that are now in limbo, many unfinished. Millions of would-be residents stuck in financial purgatory. Country Garden defaulted on $11 billion in bonds. At least 50 major developers have defaulted since 2021. In over 100 cities, home buyers threatened to halt mortgage payments on stalled projects. A rare nationwide protest. Authorities censored it immediately, but you can't censor economic reality. When the apartments don't fill, developers can't pay their debts. When developers default, banks take losses. When banks tighten lending, construction stops. When construction stops, millions of workers lose jobs. It's a cascading collapse. And it all traces back to one fundamental miscalculation: building for 1.4 billion people when the real number might be 1 billion. But real estate isn't the only thing built on the population myth. China's manufacturing dominance depends on workers, and the workforce is shrinking. China's working-age population, roughly ages 16 to 59, peaked around 2014 to 2015, according to official data. It's been declining ever since. If the official numbers were overstated, the decline in workers is likely steeper and started sooner. Factories in the export hubs of Guangdong and Beijing already report labor shortages. Younger workers are becoming scarce. Some factories raised wages by 30 to 40% to attract staff. That erodes China's cost advantage. Others have automated or relocated production to places like Vietnam and India. If China truly has 300 to 400 million fewer people than believed, many of those missing would have been of working age by now. Far fewer hands demand assembly lines, staff offices, start new businesses. In purely numerical terms, losing hundreds of millions of potential workers is like losing the entire workforces of Western Europe and Japan combined. The economic growth engine simply cannot hum as it used to, and fewer workers means fewer consumers. That's a dagger to China's hopes of transitioning from an export-led economy to a consumption-driven one. The government has been urging citizens to spend more to prop up growth, but families facing uncertain futures have tightened their belts. Now add the revelation that there are vastly fewer families than assumed. Companies flooded into China to sell luxury handbags, fast food, movies. They anticipated a billion-plus customer base. In reality, that market might be only 2/3 the size, and concentrated among older, more conservative spenders rather than endless waves of free-spending youth. The resulting overcapacity is evident everywhere. Shopping malls struggle to find tenants and shoppers. Automakers see inventory gluts. Global brands find that growth in China is not living up to the hype. Global markets priced China as an ever-expanding consumer paradise. But that vision was built on a population mirage. And then there's the aging factor. China is graying at a breathtaking pace. The official data already indicated that by 2035, China will have over 400 million people above age 60. More elderly citizens than the entire population of the United States. But if total population is smaller than thought, the share that is elderly becomes even larger. China may become a country where the ratio of retirees to workers is one of the worst in the world. A smaller base of working-age taxpayers will struggle to support a massive cohort of pensioners. Already, China's state pension fund is projected to start running dry in the 2030s. Healthcare systems, especially in rural areas, are unprepared for the tidal wave of chronic illnesses and disabilities that come with the aged society. And unlike Japan or Western Europe, China is getting old before it got rich. Its per capita income is still middle income. It doesn't have the same wealth to cushion the aging shock. If hundreds of millions of extra people were never there, there is no secret reservoir of youth coming to the rescue. The burden on each working adult to support the elderly becomes heavier. This dynamic promises slower growth and mounting social stress as the population pyramid inverts. Fewer workers, more retirees, no way out. But the economic consequences pale compared to the geopolitical earthquake. For years, global businesses, governments, and strategists planned for a world dominated by 1.4 billion Chinese. They imagined an ever-expanding market, an unstoppable juggernaut. Trillions of dollars in investment, trade, and supply chain decisions were predicated on China's purported size. If China's true population is closer to 1 billion and already shrinking every year, then the world has been dealing with an image in a funhouse mirror. The mirror made China look 40% larger than it really is. Correcting that image shakes many assumptions. Great powers draw strength from their populace, to fill the ranks of their militaries, to consume commodities and set global prices, to innovate and export culture. If China's true heft is smaller, its influence may peak sooner and lower than widely expected. It may struggle to surpass the United States in overall economic size, or it might surpass it only to plateau and then fall back. India has now overtaken China as the world's most populous nation, according to the UN. But if China has far fewer people, India likely surpassed China in population years ago. That shift has psychological and strategic weight. The title of world's largest nation has quietly passed on, and with it, the expectation that China's dominance is inevitable becomes less convincing. The 21st century might not belong to China as confidently as many assumed. Instead of China's rise being an engine pulling the global economy, we could see China becoming a drag, a source of instability as it grapples with decline. One thing is certain, if China is significantly smaller than believed, the entire global system is still operating on yesterday's numbers. Businesses, investors, and governments are making decisions based on data that may be fundamentally flawed. Supply chains are built presuming a labor pool that isn't there. Social programs and bilateral agreements rely on demographic forecasts now rendered moot. The world has been preparing for one future, a hyper-populous China dominating the century. And may get another, a China that peaks early and struggles with irreversible shrinkage. The adjustment will be jolting, but beyond the economic and geopolitical fallout, there's a deeper crisis brewing, a legitimacy crisis. The Chinese Communist Party built its legitimacy on delivering ever-expanding prosperity in global stature. An inflated population count helped reinforce that image of inevitable ascendancy. But now, reality is intruding. If the population lie is exposed, what else is fake? China's GDP figures? Its military readiness? Its technological prowess? The trust that underpins the social contract, we know what we're doing, trust us, is eroding. Youth unemployment in urban areas hit a record 21.3% for 16 to 24-year-olds in 2023. The government's response? Stop publishing the data. They suspended the youth unemployment reports and announced plans to revise methodology. Translation: the numbers were too embarrassing. A Peking University professor estimated the real youth unemployment rate, including disengaged youth, could be as high as 46.5%. Her analysis was published, then censored. Chinese youth have responded with movements like lying flat and let it rot. They've given up on striving amid bleak job prospects and societal pressure. Meanwhile, local governments face a fiscal crisis. Some civil servants haven't been paid for months. Others have seen pay cuts of 20 to 30%. Reports emerged of local governments auctioning off officials' luxury cars, slashing budgets, in some cases paying wages with rice, flour, and cooking oil instead of money. Provinces that once proudly announced double-digit growth have quietly started merging or revising their population statistics to paper over declines. The machinery is breaking down, and the more Beijing censors data, youth unemployment, births, economic troubles, the more people suspect the truth is worse than admitted. A government that lies about population will lie about anything. And when that realization sets in, the entire authoritarian bargain collapses. The party doesn't fear low numbers. It fears what low numbers prove: incompetence, deception, and failure. In authoritarian systems, truth isn't corrected, it's criminalized. But you can't arrest demographic reality. Babies aren't being born. Young people aren't magically appearing to join the workforce. The elderly aren't becoming younger. Apartments aren't filling up. The real world will continue to defy the rosy fictions. And as that happens, the party risks losing credibility not just on population data, but across the board. A moment of inevitable reckoning is approaching. It's not only China that must face it, but all of us. The world's nations must plan for a future where China is smaller, older, and perhaps weaker than assumed. Global supply chains, financial markets, and diplomatic strategies will need to adjust. Some countries may see opportunity in China's relative decline. Others may panic at losing an engine of growth. But misreading the situation benefits no one. Pretending China is still demographically gigantic and youthful when it's not could lead to serious missteps, whether in business investments or in diplomacy. There's also a broader lesson here about the dangers of suppressing the truth. For years, bad news and critical data in China have been swept under the rug to preserve face and social stability. The population lie endured as long as it did because challenging it was taboo. But reality has a way of asserting itself, eventually, unmercifully. When narratives built on falsehood finally crumble, the damage is far greater than if the truth had been confronted early. China is now scrambling to deal with a shrinking populace. But years of denial mean policies like raising the birth rate have come too late to arrest the decline. The same goes for its economic bubbles. Papering them over delayed the burst, but made it more destructive when it came. In the end, this is not just the story of one country's statistical fudge. It's a cautionary tale for the world. It urges us to look more skeptically at official numbers and grand narratives. It reminds us that even the mightiest nations can be built on fragile foundations of data. And it warns of what happens when leadership becomes more invested in maintaining a story than in facing reality. The fall of nations often begins with the lies they tell themselves. China's rise was the defining economic story of the early 21st century. Now, with the facade of 1.4 billion people exposed as perhaps the biggest falsehood of our times, we may be witnessing the first chapters of China's dramatic reversal. The leak has laid bare an uncomfortable truth, one that can no longer be ignored. The dragon is not as large as we thought, and it's rapidly growing old and tired. The world must grapple with the consequences, and China's leaders must now perform a high-wire act, managing a national come-down from the high of a mythic 1.4 billion to the sobering reality of a much smaller, grayer nation. Historians may one day point to China Dan's 2022 data dump as a pivotal moment, the instant the narrative cracked. From that point on, the illusion of inexorable growth was doomed. In its place, a new reality is settling in. The era of exponential Chinese expansion has ended, and contraction in population, in workforce, perhaps in influence, has begun. The world order trembles when such a foundational shift occurs. How prepared are we to accept it? How will China's government and people react as the truth becomes impossible to conceal? The coming years will provide the answers. But one thing is certain now: the discussion has started, and it won't be silenced. The biggest leak ever did more than expose personal data. It exposed a lie of civilization-scale proportions. And with that exposure, the fall of a long-standing illusion is underway. The question left for us all is how we handle the fallout. So, what do you think? Is China's population really hundreds of millions smaller than claimed? And if the world's been planning for the wrong future, what happens when reality catches up? Let us know in the comments and subscribe to Fall of Nations for more deep dives into the forces reshaping our world.